Hello, all. Greetings from my office. It is, I think, July 14th, 2020, and I'm recording a lecture that's for my public speaking classes. And you guys, please pay very close attention. There'll be times when I'll pause. This is one of a series of lectures about audience analysis. And this is in particular important because the case study that you're required to do at the very end of this class is a big grade, and you're required to do an audience analysis of Clarence Darrow's speech at the Leopold and Loeb case. So, at any rate, let's talk about audience analysis. Okay, for one thing, it's the most important part of public speaking. And the reason I say this is because if you have no idea what your audience's expectations are or what their needs are, you will do a very poor job at reaching them or convincing them to do anything that you would like them to do at the end of your speech. Okay, so knowing the demographics of your audience, their interests, etc., to help you craft a speech that meets their needs as well as meets your needs as far as communication is key. And as a teacher, usually I try to get my students, I try to get to know my students a little bit before I try to convey information to them, because it's easier for me to mold my metaphors or whatever that I might use in conversation to their interests, something they actually might have a connection to. And this is why it was super important for me to meet you all on Zoom or FaceTime at the very beginning of this course. And if you haven't done so, please do that. I'm mostly teach face to face. This is really hard for me, but you know, it is what it is. I say that all the time, possibly too much, but whatever. Let's talk about audience analysis, and it's super, super, super important. Okay, so first of all, what I would like you all to get out of this is to realize how important the audience is in public speaking. Public speaking, it just seems like it's one way conversation, but it's really not. Ideally, your audience will reflect upon what you have to say and perhaps generate questions and interest in your topic. Okay, so I'm not sure if you guys like to watch videos on YouTube that are funny. I do. This one made me laugh my ass off. I watched it so many times. I shared it with all my friends. This came out almost exactly a year ago today. There are these videos that show people as they ride this like super, super scary slingshot ride. And this one in particular, the girl on the right, my right, your left, passed out twice on the slingshot ride. It cracked me up. There's another video about the slingshot ride with a grandma and grandkid, and grandma actually crapped her pants. I feel sort of guilty about laughing at that sort of thing, but whatever. I can't help it. Okay, so two girls on the slingshot ride. This girl is exhilarated. She looks happy. She is having fun. Okay, why is she exhilarated on the same ride that scares the crap out of this girl? Not literally, like it did that grandma, but figuratively scares the crap out of her. Okay, so what do they each bring to the table, so to speak, as far as like hearing the message? The message is metaphorically the slingshot ride. Okay, so let's say these girls are different in their experience at amusement park rides. maybe maybe this girl is, rides roller coasters and rides like this all the time. Maybe this girl, it's her first one and she's never really had an experience like this before. And, you know, she's learned that she really doesn't like it. Okay. She's learned that she really doesn't like it. Maybe this girl was in an accident or something, maybe, just for the hell of it, I'll say maybe she tried to jump out of a parachute or an airplane and the parachute didn't work and, she almost died. That was a really stupid thing to say because why would she even be on a ride like this? But anyway, um, the metaphor is the slingshot ride is the message. The two girls are those who will receive your message. And you see that those two girls are very different. They both react very differently to the message. Okay, so metaphorically, this is how it connects to speech. To be an effective speaker, one must adapt one's speech appropriately to the audience. Not everyone is going to react to the same message in the same way. Okay. Just like these girls didn't react to the slingshot ride in the same way. All right. Okay. Audience analysis is super important. You want the audience to be on your side, so to speak. Okay. You want them to respect and be interested in what you have to say. So it's super important that you know to whom you're speaking. You know to whom you're speaking. I'm not saying that you have to know each and every audience member personally. However, you should have a pretty good idea of the demographics of your audience and other things. Okay, like I said, know your audience demographically. And this has to do with the audience's age, the gender, the culture, the ethnicity or race, religion, the socioeconomic status, and educational level. All of those things are important. For instance, I have a lot of education, but when I am speaking to a child, I don't break out every single word that I don't break out every single big word I've ever heard in my education. I try to adapt my speaking to my audience's educational level. Okay. So here's an activity. If this were a real in-person class, I would break you up into groups to have you study this case, this small case. Okay, so this is a little case study. There'll be lots of little mini case studies throughout this presentation to help you get ready for your big case study at the end of the course. Okay, so imagine the family dog is incredibly ill. He has an incurable illness and is in a lot of pain. This is a rough decision, by the way. Truly, the kindest thing to do for this family would be to euthanize him. What demographic factors should the veterinarian, consider when delivering this bad news to grandma? How should grandma then modify this message to best deliver it to her little granddaughter? What demographic factors come into play? Work with a partner, your imaginary friend is fine, and prepare to share. In about 5 minutes, I'm going to pretend to ask you about what you've come up with, and I'll probably just give you my own answer. Okay, so you can go ahead and stop the recording for a moment if you want to think about these things, right? Okay, so first of all, the person with the highest educational level, actually, I don't know what grandma's educational level is, but I'm assuming here, and I'm assuming correctly because I'm the one who made up the presentation. Yeah, the veterinarian has the highest educational level. Okay. So she is probably going to maybe not use the exact technical jargon or the Latinate words for whatever the dog has wrong with it, or him or her. Okay. She's going to tell grandma, probably in the simplest terms, about the seriousness of the dog's illness. Okay. The family dog's illness. She's not going to have a big smile on her face when she's delivering this bad news, because she's in general a compassionate person. All right. So let us see how each one of them would share this bad news. Okay, the veterinarian has the highest educational level. Okay, so most of the demographics here have to do with age and educational level. Really, as far as I know, nothing else really has to do with this except for age and educational level. The veterinarian is going to simplify her speech a little bit and have a sensitive demeanor to grandma about telling grandma about the bad news. And when grandma tells the little girl, she's going to simplify her speech even more, and maybe even, if it's the little girl's first experience with death, maybe even add a little bit onto that, a simple explanation. Actually, there's really no simple explanation for death, but yeah. So, and like I said, it might be the little girl's first experience with death. Having pets is super important to me, especially for kids. This is a little aside here. Having pets is super important. First of all, it teaches kids responsibility. If you have a measured cup and you make a little Sharpie mark at the top of the cup, even a 3-year-old child can learn to feed the dog with that kind of guidance. And sometimes it's also kids' very first experience with death. I mean, obviously, you love your dog, you love the family dog, but the family dog is probably going to die before a major family member. And children will experience death, like realize exactly what it means before they experience the death of someone, an actual person close to them. But anyway, that's what's going to happen. The vet is going to speak in somewhat simpler terms to grandma. Grandma's going to speak in somewhat simpler terms to the little girl, to her little granddaughter. And they're both going to tone down their educational level as they speak to the child. Okay. All right. So another way to analyze an audience is through attitudinal analysis. Does the person who's listening to you care or want to care about what you're speaking about, the topic of the speech? Okay. So again, this is the audience's attitude towards the specific topic of the speech, and in general, what the audience likes and dislikes, what they believe to be true. For instance, there's a whole society that believes that the earth is flat. And anything that you try to convince them with has to have that premise of their belief. It can't contradict their belief system. And what the audience values. This includes personal beliefs and standards. All right. So this is actually going to be the last part of today's lecture. Okay. So, and this is a presidential election year. So this is kind of important that you convince all of your friends to vote. So we have to convince this young man to vote for the first time. So try to use attitudinal analysis to aid you in convincing your friend who is apathetic about politics to vote for the very first time. Okay. And again, if this were an in-person class, I'd ask you to work with a partner and prepare to share. Okay. So your friend, we've established that your friend is apathetic about voting and has never voted before. When trying to convince him to vote, bear in mind what he likes and dislikes, what he believes to be true, and what he values. This includes his personal beliefs and standards. For instance, you are not going to convince somebody who's Amish, who remains in the community after Rumspringa, that the modern world is wholesome. They're not going to believe that. Okay. So, for instance, let's look at demographically about this young man. Okay. Sorry about the presentation mode that I'm using in PowerPoint. If I put it on full presentation mode, it would show you the next slide coming up. For the speaker, it'd be speaker view only. But yeah, this is the best I can do for this situation. Okay, so he's 24 years old. He's married. He has 2 daughters, and he is a laborer. He's a laborer, some type of construction worker. So let's talk about, um, you know, what would benefit him as far as voting. Why should he vote? Okay, first of all, he's a laborer. Lots of laborers lack what? Well, they lack insurance. Lots of laborers are paid by the day. Some construction workers are paid under the table, and they don't have health insurance. And this is a pretty serious thing. It's a pretty serious thing not to have health insurance, because in this country, unlike lots of other modern countries, um, we do not have universal health care. So one way that you can perhaps get this laborer to vote is to find out about his healthcare situation, and perhaps vote for a candidate who would um, make it easier for him and his girls and his wife to get healthcare. Okay, so we also realize that he has 2 girls. He has 2 girls. Okay, um, most dads want to have the best life, want to provide the best life possible for their kids, and especially their daughters, oftentimes, especially if he's a good dad. And I'm just going to assume that he is. All right. So he might want to vote for a candidate who supports women and girls. Women and girls. If he's a girl dad, he's probably going to want his girls to grow up happy and healthy. Okay. And this might include, maybe someone voting, maybe he wants to vote for a candidate who will perhaps support abortion, uh, a woman's right to choose, um, statute of limitations for sexual assault, maybe someone who's like sexual assault, unlike Roy Moore, the pedophile who ran for Alabama Senate. Okay. Um, and the fact that he's married, also, he might want to, have insurance that benefits his wife as well. Um, or maybe vote for a candidate who will give extra tax benefits to people who are married. Okay, so if you mentioned all those things, you probably would be able to convince him to vote. The only thing I didn't mention here is his religion, and I don't really know what that is. Okay, I didn't really mention that. I grew up Catholic, and lots of Catholics are very anti-abortion, are pro-life. And if you knew that about him, you could even include that in your discussion. Okay, so I'm going to stop for now. Please be on the lookout for the next video. Okay, So we have discussed so far, in summation, we have talked about audience analysis a very little bit, about getting to know your audience before you speak to them. Um, and two types of things. Also, we talked about two different types of analyzing the audience. Last one we talked about was attitudinal analysis. And the one before we talked about with the vet and the grandma and the granddaughter was demographic analysis. Okay, so we're going to stop here for now, and I will see you in the next video.